Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AAS YouTube channel. And this is part of the good stuff. This is part of the great stuff. This is the AAS Journal Author Series. And I am very happy to have Mick Bagley with us today. Hello, Mick.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there. Mick, where are you located at?
So I work at UT Austin, but I'm actually working remotely and living in Minnesota, St. Paul.
All right, very cool. So how is summer, if it's happening, on this May 8th of 2024 as we record this?
It's great. It's here. It's beautiful. It's
Nice.
sunny and warm, and that's but
And
not too warm.
the blooms are going, yes, and not too warm. It's a Midwestern kind of nice warm.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Great.
very good. So I'm in Phoenix, and we are definitely warming up. They haven't quite hit the power switch yet, but sometime in the next week or two, we will clear the triple digits Fahrenheit, and yeah, then you'll know you'll be in
That's a
Phoenix.
very different kind of warm. That's not. That's really not my jam.
Absolutely, very good, cool. And Nick, what do you like to do for research?
I am very excited to study galaxies in the early universe. So really interested in the first and early generations of galaxies. How did they form? How did they form stars? How did they grow their stellar masses? And how did they eventually turn into things like the Milky Way that we see today? But really focused on sort of the early stages, and how we can explain how they build up their mass, how they merge, how they form black holes, and all the fun stuff in the early
Yeah.
universe.
Cool, very cool, very cool. And that is going to bring us to this very awesome APJ letter. It is open access. It's the open access era, people. You can go grab a copy for free. Go get one. The Next Generation Deep Extragalactic Exploratory Public NGDEEP Survey. And Mick, take us away.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm super excited to be telling you all about this paper. I'm here as a representative of the NGDEEP team. This paper and really the whole survey, but speaking of this paper, was a full team effort, and so everyone listed here contributed both to the initial JWST Cycle 1 proposal that turned into this project,
Okay.
but also really helped write the paper. So this is our goal with this paper is really to present the survey, to describe the survey design, to describe the observations, and then also to describe the science we want to be able to do with the survey. So we're not really presenting full science results here. We're sort of setting the stage for everything that we want to do with the data, and we hope everyone else will do with the data too, since it is public.
Cool. Very nice. Good shout out. Good shout out. Very good. Okay, let's go to it.
Yeah, so just, I guess, describing the survey. Well, I mean, I highly recommend folks check out this introduction. We started off writing sort of a history of deep fields in astronomy, and we try, and there's a glorious history here to be read, and we obviously couldn't cover all of it, but it's a really exciting, set of building blocks to be moving forward, to be taking the field into deeper and deeper parts of the sky. And the aim of NGDEEP is to sort of be the next step, to be one of the first deep fields with JWST, and to yes, and to really in the early days of JWST set the stage for what can be done with the deep fields.
Nice.
So what could we do in Cycle 1 that would show that we should keep pouring some of our resources into future deep fields? And what kind of science would that enable? And that was sort of the main goal. So the survey is led, there are 3 co-PIs, Steve Finkelstein, Casey Papovich, and Nora Perskal. So it's a 3-pronged effort. And again, a huge team effort to bring it all to fruition.
Very nice.
We are using 2 different instruments in parallel. So we're focusing, I guess this might be a good time to go to figure 1, if that's okay.
Yeah, slitless. Okay, very good. Let's go take a look at figure 1. This is a really awesome figure. Here we go.
Cool. Yeah, so this figure is showing the full layout of NGDEEP. This was a figure from our proposal, so it's a little bit of like a, we made this before there were data, so it's
Sure.
almost exactly what ended up happening. I think there's a slightly different position angle that we ended up with, but But right, so here's our sort of planned survey. The idea initially came out, we were looking for the deepest optical imaging on the sky. So that we're looking at ACS F814W, which is the gray exposure time map that you're seeing in the background here.
Yes.
So deepest pointing would be that darker square on the lower left image.
Mhm.
And then the deepest let's see, I believe it's the F435W from ACS
Okay.
over HUDF. And so it just so happens that that the distance between the orientation and the distance between the Hubble Ultra Deep Field and the parallel 2 field that has that deepest I-band imaging available in the sky is the same separation as that between NIRISS on JWST and NIRCam. And so it seemed like a really great place to focus a cycle 1 deep field. So we wanted to put deep slitless spectroscopy on the HUDF and NIRCam imaging on that parallel field that already had really deep I-band.
Cool.
And so that's what's shown here. The pink magenta thing, yes, thank you, is the NIRISS, the planned NIRISS pointings. And then the NGDEEP are shown there in red. We are centering the observation on NIRISS, and then we are doing it in 2 different position angles that are just a little bit, they're 3 degrees apart. And so that's why there's a little bit of a shift in rotation in the NGD pointing. I'm sorry, in the NIRCam pointing.
Yeah.
And then what we're showing here is we're trying to, this is the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. This is good south. There is a huge wealth of available information from ground and space-based observatories, only a small percentage of which we could highlight here. But we're showing some of the existing HST coverage. You've got ACS in black. We've got the HUDF for the WIFC3 and the 435W that I mentioned. That's the white and tan. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and the blue outlines, and then the parallel 2 field again in green.
Very nice.
Yeah, and we're listing here in the 2 insets. We're listing the expected magnitude limits and resolved flux limits that in the flux limits we were expecting for resolved sources. Based on the ETC pre-flight, this was early days, but it ended up being, of course, JWC is doing better than we expected. So this is right on, basically.
All righty. I'm with you. Okay.
Okay, yeah. And so our observations were taken in 2 different epochs. This ended up being not quite planned, but it, take you on the story of what happened. We were scheduled to be observed in like late January, early February of 2023.
Okay.
And just around that time, the NIRISS instrument had some problem. I forget what it was. And by the time that problem was fixed, our observation window was only like 2 days long. And so we were only able to get one of our PAs in 2020. So at the time we actually wrote this paper, we just had half the data, and it was beautiful, but there were a few issues which we can talk about. Okay. And then the second set of observations were taken in January, February of this year, 2024. Okay. 3 degrees at a different 3 degrees of a different angle. And we learned a few lessons from the first round, and we changed our NIRCam observation slightly, which I will talk about when we get there, because I think it's an important lesson that we learned from these observations. Okay. So we've got 2 epochs, which is great, because now we've got twice the exposure time in the field. Yes. And we sort of semi-turned it into a bit of a transient opportunity. So you can search for transients in.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Because we've got 2 epochs.
Right.
Not originally planned.
Okay. Very cool.
So I think what else can I say about our position angles are chosen. Most of our observations are constrained by the nearest side. So we have 2 different PAs because we want to separate out the spectra, like contaminating spectra that you would get in slitless spectroscopy. So you take your, disperse all the sources across the detector, and then you rotate it a little bit, disperse them again, and now you can tell the difference between, you know, overlapping spectra in one PA will hopefully not be overlapping in the other. It's benefited by the fact that NEAREST also gives you row and column grisms, so now you've got technically 4 PAs for the NEAREST spectroscopy.
Cool.
It does limit how we, what we can do, and I think if we could move down to figure 2.
Sure, let's slide on down. Here's NGDEEP observations. There's some great tables of the observations we talked about, and there's 2 epochs, sensitivities.
Might have you jump around a bit here.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Okay, figure 2.
Yeah. Yeah, so what we end up with on the NIRCam side then, because you've got in the short wavelength the 8 detectors, and we now have 2 different PAs, we end up with different tiers of depth. So it is a deep field, but it is not a uniform observation across the. We couldn't really do. We were stuck with very small dithers because we didn't want sources to dither out of the HUDF field.
Okay.
And so the NIRCam observations are sort of highly constrained in that sense. So if we're just focusing first on the right, we're looking at an exposure time map of the NIRCam in each of the filters. And you can see that in the short wavelength channel, there's, you know, just quite a pattern that you get in the depth maps. And the dithers actually get bigger as you go to longer wavelengths, because they are tied to the NEAREST like direct imaging that has to, you sort of have to dither larger to get a larger view of the full field.
There you
to
go.
understand where your sources are in the slitless spectroscopy. So we've sort of got a fairly complicated depth map here, which is reflected on in the left-hand panel, where we're showing area as a function of 5 sigma magnitude in different filters, where this was all predicted etc pre-launch stuff. Actually, I think this might have been the version 2 that was just released post-launch, but right, this is still predicted. This isn't measured on our real data. And the solid lines are NGDEEP, and the dashed lines are with just JADES as a comparison. Yeah. So what I like about this figure is that it shows that you know, NGDEEP is about as deep as much of JADES, and JADES of course covers a larger area. NGDEEP does go much deeper in 444, so there's some extra discovery. So that's the purple line that goes out.
30
of extra discovery space for NGDEEP in that filter at that wavelength. But what this shows, I think, is that these 2 surveys are complementary, right? You're adding, NGDEEP is providing another deep portion of the sky. It's close to the JADES and the Good South. It's nearby, but it's adding area at an almost equivalent or slightly deeper depth, which is great for science.
Absolutely. Very nice.
Yeah.
You keep
let's see. Let's go. I want to talk a little. Let's see. What do I want to do next? I think, yeah, so we skipped past some tables quickly that really do present our depths and sensitivity measurements. So we could look at, I think it's tables 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
And yeah, table 3, we could start here.
Your epochs,
Yeah, right. So this is showing our observation sequences. We're trying to provide all the information you need to download all of the NGDEEP data and know what's what. So we've got, we're listing here the NEAREST side, the NIRCam side, the exposure sequences, and you'll see that we've got a set of deep exposures that are, you know, 15,000 seconds, and you know, and those are sets of dithers, and then sets of shallow exposures that are in parallel to the NEAREST direct imaging. So we're sort of, there's a non-uniform set of observations, which turns out to be a little bit difficult to reduce. So we can, which is certainly something to talk about. But right, just to set the stage for all of our observations, we have some of our expected depths in table 2.
Line sensitivities, yes. Okay.
So these are broadly speaking for both instruments. the total number of observation hours, and this is for the full survey, and then the expected line sensitivities and absolute magnitudes. In theory, for these observations, we were looking at resolved sources. So we were trying to be really conservative here and saying like we're actually going quite deep, 31.2 in F115 from the NIRCam side. What we have had from our first epoch of NIRCam observations, a little bit of some depth problems. We had a little bit of difficulty reaching the expected sensitivities in our data.
Got it.
So we discovered, and here's my public service announcement for anyone using planning AWS-T observations. We were originally limited to use the DEEP 8 observing mode, which is designed to reduce data volume for deep observations. And with a few groups, we didn't have that many groups because we were very worried about cosmic rays. We ended up not sort of having less sensitivity in our observations than we should have. We're on a year-long discovery journey of trying to understand what the problem was, working closely with Space Telescope and also with the instrument team to figure this out. We're pretty sure that if you only have a few groups and you're not sampling your exposure time up the ramp very often, you have a really hard time fitting the ramps correctly. So for anyone planning deep observations, do your very best to either avoid using DEEP 8 and try using a medium 8, which samples the ramp more frequently, or try to have as many groups as possible if you have to use DEEP 8.
Okay, very good.
So we're in the weeds there, but it's an important message, I think.
Very good, thank you. Value add. It's a value add.
Yeah.
And then table 2, and then table 3, we get some of our expected counts.
Yeah, table 3 is great. Yeah. So this was using the JADES mock catalog that was created by Christina Williams and that team. We used it, again, this was pre-launch. We used it to run a bunch of simulations with NIRISS to see what kind of how many galaxies, how many emission lines, at what signal to noises would we be able to detect at these depths. So this would be looking at the HUDF. And here was our expected yields at different either 3 sigma or 5 sigma and the redshift ranges associated with those emission lines. So this is sort of a sum total of what we would expect to get in the NGDEEP NIRISS observations. Yeah. And then and number also at redshift. So because we're looking at, for the NIRISS side, we're looking at redshifts in the like 1 to 2 to 3 range. And we're sort of seeing that, you're going deep, you're looking at the lower mass, fainter galaxies that we haven't really seen before. And so we're really, this is like a new parameter space for studying evolution. What's that?
Yeah, we said the same words at the same time, parameter space.
Nice.
James.
Yeah, okay, so again, this paper was sort of really presenting the survey, presenting the data, giving everybody hopefully all the information they need to use the data to do science. Cool. So in the next few sections, we present a set of a full end-to-end simulation for both instruments. Nice. So this was done as part of our proposal. It was sort of a proof of concept of the observations, of the proposed observations, but it became very useful for identifying, what sensitivities we would expect, how we would reduce the data, how we would process it. So we could go to, I think we're at figure 3 now. I sort of have lost track of numbers.
It's all good. Figure 3 simulations, WFSS.
Yeah. So this is the result of Noor Perskal's end-to-end NIRISS simulations. He did it using the JADES input catalog. Okay. And he is showing here a result. So we used the Mirage simulator. So we created full raw data that has all the instrumental noise and effects added. And then we reduced all of it as we would the real data. And Noor also did his, applied his, he has a patented slitless spectroscopy emission line or sort of source spectrum extractor, I'll call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then emission line.
Yeah, sure.
So he's applying all of that to the data, and this figure is showing an example of that simulated spectra. So he's got the top row from the three. We're using the three filters, 115, 150, and 200. And the two different colors, the green and the red, are the row and column grisms. So
okay.
from this observation. So
Gotcha.
and right, this is all simulated. And Noor Perskal has a paper out on the real NGDEEP nearest data. So check that out for a very, very in-depth description of how he reduced it, how he put a ton of work into coming up with a full wavelength calibration, how he does a full simulation of the entire field of view so that he can simulate and model all of the spectra in order to extract them. And he goes into all of the details of the real data, provides the real sensitivities. We are, spoiler alert, doing pretty much as well as we expected. So that's really exciting. But definitely check out Noor's paper.
And we'll put a link to that paper in the description below this video. Okay.
Great. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so then the next set of simulations was for NearCam, which would be the next figure.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Yep.
Same deal. We used Mirage
Okay.
to create a full set of observations. We used at the time it was the Santa Cruz SAM and run by Rachel Somerville and Aaron Young, and now they've sort of updated it to be GREFT, which I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, GUREFT. Sorry, Aaron, if I've pronounced simulation wrong, but it's sort of it's a semi-analytic model of galaxy formation.
Okay.
And so we're using that here. We did, again, end-to-end simulations, and then we've got on the right-hand side some examples of high redshift 10, 11, 12, 13 galaxies and what they would look like both in Sears. Many of us are part of the Sears team, so we were interested in comparing to Sears. So we're looking at what the same galaxies would look like in a Sears observation versus the NGDEEP observations.
Yeah.
So the ones highlighted in blue, the blue boxes show you the capabilities of NGDEEP, and the little boxes under them would be what you would see in Sears. Yeah. And you can see that, I mean, if you're just comparing the two insets sort of in the middle, there's like night and day how many extra galaxies are sort of pop out in the NGDEEP image.
Bing, bing,
really
bing,
exciting.
Bing, 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 bing. Many.
Yeah.
Many small ones.
Really, right. Which actually ended up being a challenge in the data reduction. There are so many galaxies in the images that getting like a clean background subtraction becomes difficult.
Okay. Sure.
And then on the left, we've got some examples. We put in some sources that have like sort of really intense low surface brightness features and sort of more complicated morphologies. Some from both the Vela and the Simba simulations. And so we put them into these simulated observations to see what they would look like when we recovered them. And they're just glorious.
They are glorious indeed.
So right there, I believe there we're looking at a whole bunch of like star forming clumps sort of in the least fifth region of a galaxy. And then in the stamps down below, you can see the difference again between NGDEEP and Sears. A lot of the details of what's going on in those galaxies just disappears at the Sears depth. And you just wouldn't know that there's all these other clumps of stuff of star formation, of dust, of what have you. So it's an exciting set of data to use.
Nice. Very nice.
So then the paper then moves on, sections 4 and 5, to set the stage for the planned science goals of the survey. These are science goals that our team certainly is very interested in studying and working on. And we have a few early papers out, and then and we're planning many more. But also we hope the community, will be working on some of these and other science goals as well. Going to be very upfront and say the nearest science case is not my area of expertise.
Fine.
It's incredibly exciting. I will go quickly and really point you to those experts to talk about them. But on the nearest side, we're looking at star formation and feedback at I'm going to say lower redshift, sort of
Yeah.
1 to 4. The broad goal for NGDEEP, we said, was constraining feedback across cosmic time.
Okay.
And the idea was that on the nearest side, you're looking at redshifts 1 to 3, 1 to 4 in the low mass population.
Yes.
And the NIRCam side, you're looking at redshifts 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, or more.
Right.
And so, but by going faint in both cases, you're really able to target the galaxies that are most affected by things like stellar and AGN feedback.
Okay.
Stellar winds, how does chemical enrichment proceed in a galaxy when you've got pristine gas falling? Actually, we could go to the figure, I believe it's I'm sorry, I'm not sure what number we're on. Figure 6, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, figure 5 right here.
Oh, sorry. Went by figure 5. You want yeah, this is your MZR.
Yeah, so this is so I would direct everyone to Danielle Berg on our team. She's definitely the expert to talk to about this. But the idea here would be, how does a low mass galaxy, how is a low mass galaxy affected? How is the chemical enrichment affected by, star formation, by pristine gas inflowing, by gas outflowing, enriched gas being stripped out of the galaxy? And so this figure shows on the left side, it shows, with the exception of the purple, sort of existing observations and simulations predicting what the mass metallicity relationship would look like.
Okay.
But in purple, this is again based on our simulations. This is what NGDEEP takes that information and pulls it all the way down to low masses. So you really start to understand what's going on in these low mass galaxies. Redshifts like 1 to 4. So this would be a very exciting set of data to be looking at this type of science. And NEARES was also gonna give us tons of emission lines. So there's a few science cases in here looking at star formation rates using the H-alpha line, and then we also have because the HUDF has this deep F435W imaging, you can compare the H-alpha star formation rates to the UV star formation rates and starting to put a full picture both of like burstiness, because they're each going to be looking at different time scales, and also just looking at 2 different measures of star formation. So that's another goal of the nearest side.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm probably missing all kinds of amazing science you can do with NEARES. We have a couple of papers out so far. I mentioned Nora Perskal's. Lu Shen also has a paper looking at, I believe it's sort of resolved H-alpha observations, where she's looking at disk and bulge growth in resolved emission line maps with the NEARES NGDEEP data. So definitely check that paper out.
Will do.
Yeah, so these are all great figures to check out, and I'm gonna skip over them. Let's move on to the NIRCam science side.
Okay.
Section 5, yep, a little bit more up my alley. So yeah, figure 8 here.
Yeah, let's do figure 8. What do you want? What was section 5? But I missed that. NGDEEP. Here we go. Science cases.
Yeah, so now we're looking at the science cases for the NIRCam imaging side. And we're here now. We're now, many of these cases are going to be focused on pushing our understanding of the universe towards first light. So really moving into the redshift 10, 11, 12 and beyond regime. Yeah. So if we're, and we've seen a lot of the early results from JWST showing, if you think back to the summer of 2022, the first set of high redshift results, we're suddenly seeing that the universe is full of galaxies, maybe more than we expected. Yes. And we were, the first set of observations were looking at the bright, sort of the UV brighter galaxies that are more UV bright. Yes. And you know, they were shallower observations, and we were finding many more than models certainly could predict. Lots of theories about how you get those. Contamination doesn't seem to be the main answer, because several of those have already been spectroscopically confirmed. You know, so we're trying to push NGDEEP to be the complement to some of those shallower observations. You're talking Sears and Primer and Cosmos Web. Those are all going to do a great job of looking at what's happening at the bright end.
Okay.
And to see the full picture, you need to go to the faint end too. You need to look at the low mass galaxies that are going to be strongly affected by, you know, feedback from supernova blowing gas out.
Yes.
And how much mass you are, you know, pushing out of the galaxy that shuts down star formation in these low mass halos, for example. So that's tying us back into the feedback across cosmic time, looking at feedback affecting the faint end of the UV luminosity function at redshifts 11, 12. So that brings us to figure 8.
Figure 8. Ooh, predicted numbers. Okay.
Yeah, so this figure is showing on the, I have hard time with right and left. On the left side, we're looking at the cumulative number of galaxies that would be predicted as a function of redshift. So this was pre-launch, that we're looking at 5 different models of galaxy evolution. They all sort of involve different assumptions, different physics. And so we're looking in each redshift bin, the range of galaxies that could be detected by NGDEEP. So that's what that shaded bar shows. It's like the maximum to the minimum number of galaxies according to the most optimistic versus the least optimistic theoretical model.
Gotcha.
The idea here is that, you know, whatever number of galaxies NGDEEP finds in these redshift bins can be highly constraining on sort of what's going on in those models predicting number density of those redshifts.
Right. Cool. Good.
And then on the right side, we're showing as an example, I believe this is focused on redshift 10, right? So this is just looking at redshift 10.
Yeah, right here. Bing. Okay.
Yep.
Correlate.
So right. So NGDEEP can go even further, but looking at looking as low as redshift 10, we've got a UV luminosity function, so density is a function of UV absolute magnitude. This is from Aaron Young's SAM, and Rachel Somerville's SAM, so that's what the central dashed line is. And then if you take that SAM and you change the star formation law, so that this purple region that you have at the bright end, you get a different number density based on how efficient, let's say, you are at converting gas into stars.
Yeah.
So that's going to really affect what happens at the bright end. And where wider area surveys are going to be better. So we showed Sears as an example, saying, you know, Sears can start to put constraints on that bright end, but Sears, you know, its magnitude limit is about -19 at this redshift. So it can't really tell you much of what's going on at the faint end. And at the faint end, the pink swath that you get, the light red shaded region is what you get if you change the mass loading factors in the stellar winds that are being blown out of the galaxies. And so again, we're changing sort of the physics that we're assuming in this semi-analytic model to get that range. And so we're seeing that the NGDEEP observations and the error bars on those observations are very tight. We show an error bar if you only consider NGDEEP or if you also add it to JADES. Those are the 2 ranges. The observations have the potential to be very constraining, even down to -15. So that's a very exciting aspect of these data, and really shows how JADES, NGDEEP, the MIDAS observations, which is another sort of NIRCam pointing in the same region, they're all like a complementary set of surveys that will go to help us stitch together what's going on here.
Cool. That was awesome.
So I think, and there are plenty of other things we can do with NIRCam, obviously. Now we've got this glorious NIRCam imaging set or data set. So we've got members of our team who actually, before I go there, I should mention that we do have a paper out of the UV luminosity function. So Jean Lung published a paper just using the first half, that first epoch.
Oh, the first one. Yeah.
The first one, the first half of the data. We're working on one that combines all of the data. But he found, I believe he found like 35 or 38 galaxies out to redshift 15. So it was really exciting. Just in a single NIRCam pointing, we're finding like a huge amount of galaxies. And we do have in Steve Finkelstein wrote a paper where he combined Jean's luminosity function with the full Sears luminosity function, and it looks remarkably like, the predictions. So just very, very exciting results coming out of that.
Nice.
And then once you have a sample of high redshift galaxies, now you can look at things like chemical enrichment at these redshifts, because, previously, even in this field, which was probably the best studied field or one of the best studied fields in the sky, the real wavelength coverage ended around 1-2 microns.
Yeah.
So at these redshifts, you're only looking at most one color. But with NIRCam, you now have 4 or 5 colors that you can study these galaxies in.
Nice.
And Alexa Morales wrote a paper using the sample of high redshift galaxies from Jean Lung's paper.
Okay.
And she measured UV beta slopes for them to look at what the chemical enrichment is out at these redshifts.
Okay.
Found evidence for, really, very blue slopes, but not quite as blue as we would expect if we were starting to see examples of the first POP3, or not, if we were starting to see examples of POP3 stars. So not quite the siren or smoking gun or whatever you want to call it, super, super pristine galaxies that we expect we'll see at some point. We didn't find evidence for those in NGDEEP, but certainly incredibly blue, which is what you'd expect for really, really young galaxies in the early universe.
Goes in the right direction. Yep. Yeah.
So then you can go, now you've got this great data set, you can do all kinds of morphology work, which we have team members who are planning on working, this is all stuff we haven't published yet, but it's in the works. Looking at those low surface brightness features, looking at morphologies across cosmic time, looking at bulges and bars, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we're talking about a very, very deep NIRCam image.
It's rich, very rich.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I think that mostly brings us to the end here. We do sort of lay out our plan for data releases, which we have not as a team released yet, but it's imminent, I'll say. Things were delayed a little bit when our observations got split in half.
Yep.
And then again, when we had a sensitivity issue we didn't understand.
Yeah.
But understand it now. We think we have a way to reduce the data in a way that recovers some of that depth. And we are, and then on the nearest side, getting the wavelength calibration was very challenging, I know, for Noor. So he's got some beautiful spectra. Again, see publications soon to be submitted. But he's got some beautiful spectra showing all 4 PAs, separated by a year, just gloriously lined up in wavelength space. So
very
so
cool.
we are still planning data releases. We have not yet done them. I think we haven't. I think we said sort of May, and it's May now. When did that happen? But we're getting closer. Let's be closer to our data is all public. Of course, anyone can use it, but we want to provide reduced versions that we have put a lot of effort into. So we want to make those available once they're ready.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Mick,
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for walking us through your very lovely APJ letter. That is awesome. Yeah. And you touched on it a little bit as you went through it. I noticed there were many papers, picking off, this part of the science or that part of the science. And so let me just ask, where do you think we go with global NGDEEP articles over the next couple of years? Is there going to be after you do some data releases, is there going to be a big NGDEEP results, big old 93-page APJ supplement or something like that?
Great. Yeah.
So sort of where do we go? Where do we go?
Yeah. So I think we all have, I would say there's probably I'm trying to remember, you know, the last telecon that we had, but I think there's probably about 15 to 20 papers currently in prep. So certainly our team is hard at work trying to get all the science they can out of these data. And I'm sure other teams are as well. And we want people to be using, you know, these observations. So this is an awesome data set. We do have a focus issue in AppJ.
There we go.
Thing should this paper should be part of it, where we're going to be putting, because our observations got spread out, our publications are a little spread out. And I think the key results will end up in that focus issue as they are ready. And I think there's probably 4 already in there.
Oh, so there already is a focus issue.
There is a focus issue. I don't know if it's been fully published as.
No, probably not. But and there is.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Jean's, Noor's paper, this paper should all be in that focus issue whenever it gets finalized.
Okay, I will look, and if that focus issue currently exists, I will put a link to that below the video.
Sorry for the vague.
No. It's journal speak. It's okay.
Yeah. So that's sort of like the near plan of our team. We've got a lot of papers in the works, mostly focused on the science that we had written into the proposal and into this survey paper. But I also think, you know, our vision was that NGDEEP would be a jumping off point for future JWST deep fields. Yeah. Well, the idea was do a deep field. So certainly, you know, we've got plenty of deep observations with NGDEEP, but do a focused deep field early on in the mission so that you now have something that you can learn from and build on. And so our hope is that things like the deep jades and NGDEEP and other areas of the sky too, because we shouldn't all focus on good self, right? There are plenty of other the glass observations go very. You've got uncover. I mean, you've got a lot when you start talking about lensing clusters, that opens up a whole new door.
That's a whole thing in itself.
Right. But I think like the point is we need all of them, right? We need to be really combining as much of these data sets as we can to get the full picture of galaxy evolution.
Maximize that data or science return on that data. Absolutely.
So I guess my take home message would be whoever sits on attack, approve deep fields. We'll
go with that endorsement. Okay. That was great. Very good. Yeah. Nick, thank you so much for walking us through your very lovely article. It was great.
Thanks for the opportunity. This has been a lot of fun.
Sure. And that will do, everyone. And I hope this makes your astronomy day just a little bit better, and we will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.